and the good
Recording in progress.
and the good it can do. But Wellstar had the Democrats furious at them for closing Atlanta Medical Center. They had the Republicans furious at them.
So, Joe, I'm going to interrupt because sometimes I'm just rude that way. And welcome everybody to the GAE Retired Lunch Bunch. As you know, we meet the first Wednesdays of each month, and we're so glad you're here today. My name is Karen Solheim. I'm on the GAE Board of Directors and a very happy retired member. I feel that we are so fortunate to have Joe Fleming here. He is GAE's Government Relations Director, Chief Lobbyist, cook and bottle washer. I don't know, other duties as assigned. But Joe went through and at the beginning of General Assembly 2023 predicted doom and gloom.
Yeah, I did.
You did. I mean, I was scared. I was very afraid. And also with us, if you haven't noticed, we have GAE President Lisa Morgan, who spent a lot of time also lobbying down at the Capitol. I think she and Joe had their routine of who was bringing what candy bar when so that they could make it through the session. And then also joining us is Debbie Simons, who is TRS, Board of Directors Chair. And so, you know, at least I thought TRS would be something we'd be talking about every other day as far as legislation dropping for the first of the 2-year biennium. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Joe. And Joe, you have until about 12:22. And I don't know how you want to handle questions, if you want to do them as they come, people put them in the chat, etc. But thank you. Thank everybody for being here today. And let's hear a wrap up and see what you think might be happening in the short term, long term.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. I was doom and gloom in the beginning. I thought there was going to be a really bad TRS bill. I thought there was good. I thought the governor in his state of state might have a voucher program offered. I really, for some reason, just felt like this was going to be a tough year. And it was a tough year, no doubt about it. But in the end, I think it's the most successful session in my short term with GAE, about 4 or 5 sessions now. And I just am super proud of our members for engaging and repeatedly engaging, and that makes a difference. If you ever have a doubt when you get a call to action from us asking you to write or email legislators, you know that the voucher bill passed because of GAE members' involvement. We had over 1,000 phone calls and letters go in.
Re-say that, Joe. The voucher bill did not pass. The voucher.
That's right. Sorry. And I would get to that, but we asked our members on a number of occasions to weigh in, and they did. And I'm convinced that's what swayed the day for the vote on the voucher. So let's start with vouchers just real quickly. This year in the Senate, there was introduced a universal voucher that would be something, for example, the state of Arizona has, where any kid in the state can get a what they like to call a scholarship, what I would call a taxpayer subsidy to attend the private school of their choice. So any kid, for any reason, could qualify for this. We have a voucher program in Georgia you may be aware of, which is called the Special Needs Voucher. And it is a voucher that is intended to be given to kids that have medical or learning disabilities. I think like 12,000 kids participate in that. This would have made every one of the 1.75 million kids in Georgia eligible. I mean, it is going for the jugular of public education. But right off the bat, the sponsor, Greg Dolezal from Fulton County, must have known he didn't have the votes to pass that. So he pared it down. He made it a private school subsidy for kids that attend the lowest performing schools in the state, probably based on CCRPI. But really what it did, it was it stole from the poor to give to the more privileged. It was a $6,000 voucher when it left the Senate. Again, about 400,000 kids in the bottom performing schools. But these are Title I schools. These are schools that the majority of families are on food stamps. And the $6,000 voucher isn't going to be enough to pay for most private schools in Georgia. And, these families are really more concerned about putting food on the table in some instances. So we're taking from the poorest school systems. And not only we're just taking from them, for every dollar the state would give in an FTE count to a school, $2 would leave that school for private school tuition. Really insanity. I started calling the bill just cruel because that's what it was. So when it got to the House Education Committee, there were more amendments to it. Some Republicans trying to make it a little more palatable to some of their colleagues. And then it was calendared for a vote on Monday of last week. After an hour and a half debate, apparently Jan Jones, the number 2 in the House, learned that there were not enough votes to pass it. So they sent it back to Rules Committee, amended it some more, and came back on sine die about 10 minutes before 9 o'clock. 85 to 89 was the prevailing margin against the bill. 16 Republicans joined all but 1 Democrat for that bill. 8 of the Republicans are committee chairmen. I mean, we're not just talking about freshmen, and we're talking about serious legislators with a lot of clout and pull. And it's just degenerated since then. If you log on to Twitter or Facebook, search the internet, there's nothing but threats against these Republicans now. And we need to be there prepared to support those 16 Republicans and those Democrats that voted against the bill. So they're all up for election in a year and a half in November of 2024. We'll keep them in mind and be working to replenish our PAC because we gave generously this year too. So we won the voucher bill, and I had more gloom and doom that day, Karen. I was worried when it came out of Rules Committee the first time in the House that it wouldn't have come out of the Rules Committee unless they had the votes, but they didn't. Then the last time they went to the Rules Committee and amended again, surely they've got the votes now. They've got the Speaker saying he's for it, the number 2, Jan Jones saying she's for it. The governor came out in favor of. This is an idea, by the way, it's embraced in the Republican the Republican Party platform. So all the odds were against us, and I'm convinced that the reason we were successful in beating back this voucher attempt is because our members engaged. They engaged and it made a difference. So the good news is we probably won't see another voucher bill for some. Of course we will. We'll see a voucher bill again in January. This one's actually still alive in a 2-year session. There may be other changes to it or other different bills filed, but every year for the past 15 years has been a voucher bill. So I'm happy to take any questions on that as we go.
I'm going to go first because when they move, not that everybody watches Cine Die at home on the computer, but when it went back, Joe, to be reconsidered that evening, did you think, why did they do that? They made a motion that passed to be reconsidered. Did you have expectations that it was going to come up again that evening?
No, I actually didn't at that point. So just to explain a little bit of process for those that are watching, you can, after a bill has been defeated, there can be a motion to reconsider it. Technically, that motion should have, well, it did pass. There should have been a vote immediately after. It's the way the process is supposed to work. but I think John Burns, the speaker, was as surprised as anybody. Literally, there were screams and shouts that could be heard over in the Senate side. But getting 6 votes, I didn't think they could do that on reconsideration. And it turns out they didn't think they could either. People were locked into their position. If you were voting no, you're already taking your medicine, so to speak. So at that point, I was beginning to feel a little bit more comfortable about it. So anyway, a great victory for us. They are back every year. They'll be back again, and we'll be back again to fight them as well.
I think Debbie had a question.
Sure.
Oh, nope, she says no. Okay.
So let's cut to retirement issues, and Debbie and Lisa, feel free to chime in at any time. One of our biggest priorities this session was what to do with the ESP members that are members of what's called the Public School Employees Retirement System. So your school bus drivers, your cafeteria workers, maintenance personnel, and custodians are not a part of TRS. They have a separate pension plan, and I just named it the Public School Employees Retirement System. We had asked a year ago in January, the then chairman of the retirement committee, Randy Robertson, to introduce a bill to form a study committee of PSERS and the benefits that are afforded to those ESPs in it. He ended up not creating the study committee, but just held hearings of his own retirement committee, 2 of them last year. First one, I don't think we really moved the needle much. We explained some of the problems, but they had it at 10 a.m. on a Friday, which is a really hard time for a lot of our ESPs to get off work to tell their stories. So after that hearing, we asked Chairman Robertson to hold another hearing, if possible, on a Saturday or another time when our ESPs could be there. And he did. He did it in basically his hometown, Columbus, Georgia, on a Saturday. Lisa, you want to recap a little bit about that meeting? I was on my way to Washington, D.C. with my kids while y'all were.
Yeah. So, yes. And before I start that, I want to let everybody know I'm going to have to jump off in a few minutes, and I will join on my phone. Joe, I'm going to the Capitol. I have an interview for media at the Capitol this afternoon. So our PSERS hearing in Columbus was very successful. Thank you, GAE-Retired. We had several of our retired members there. We also had bus drivers. We had bus drivers come up from Valdosta. And I truly believe it was those bus drivers from Valdosta speaking up and telling their story that got to Senator Robertson and Senator Walker. I think the reality of what our members face with their low salaries and their low pension, they could not deny it when it was right there in front of them. So that to me was the turning point. I know once we started this session, and once I started, and I think Joe had the same experience, once we started talking to senators and representatives about the bills that Senator Walker were bringing forth, they would say, oh, no. Senator Robertson's already talked to us about this. We know what's going on. We are all supporting this. So I think that was very key that they heard. And I'm just going to be blunt with y'all. Teachers have been beat up all to, by different parts of the Republican Party. And I said in COVID, we went from heroes to zeros overnight. And we still haven't recovered as teachers, but everybody still loves their bus drivers, their cafeteria workers. They still have those good memories of those employees. So it was easier for them to stand up against the anti-public education that we saw a lot of, because it was for Miss Etal in the cafeteria. It was for Mr. Jimmy that drives my bus. And so I think that really helped us. And I don't know if Joe saw that as well, but I certainly did.
Yeah, but just putting stories and faces with an issue it was very effective. And Senator Walker's a Republican from Perry, Georgia, just really dug into this issue. So he had two bills offered basically on our behalf. One would, so let me say this: monthly pension benefits for an ESP and PSERS are done years of service times a dollar multiplier. As of right now, that dollar multiplier is $16. As of now, that multiplier could go up to $16.50, but it's capped at that number by law. Okay. So his first bill, SB 101, which is a 2-year bill because it has fiscal.
105, Joe, you're sleeping.
Oh, what did I say?
You said 101.
Oh, well, I have that on my mind too. I'm sorry. Yes, SB 105 is a 2-year bill. It has a potential fiscal impact. So it's a 2-year bill. It means that the committee votes it out this year, sends it to an actuarial study, and then votes on it the next year. So he introduced this bill to actually eliminate that cap altogether and create a minimum of $17. So that bill will be voted on next year, but it does something very, very important. It takes that cap off the multiplier and eliminates it, and it can go no lower than $17. Again, it's currently at 16. It's at 1650 that they go to in law. That bill will go and we'll deal with it next year, and I think we have a great chance of passing it. Larry Walker also had another bill, SB 240, which would have done a study of school systems that to determine which ones participate in the Social Security Administration. Reportedly at the hearing and anecdotally, and maybe even confirmed, we have reports that school systems are not paying into Social Security for their ESPs. Even if they opted out of participating in Social Security for members of TRS, the law states that they must be participating in Social Security or an equivalent alternative plan. Something like what Gwinnett County offers, for example, might qualify as a plan, so they might not have to participate in PSERS. So unfortunately, SB 240 got loaded down with 5 different bills at the end and didn't pass. The other approach to the ESP program was to deal with the budget and add funding to it to go to the maximum by law now, again, $16.50. So a 50-cent increase is not great. Believe me, you understand that, but it's as high as we can go right now. In the future, it's as high as we can convince legislators to raise it. So I think Lisa and I were just delighted that we did capture the heart and mind of Randy Robertson and Larry Walker on that issue. Debbie, you may want to chime in on TRS, but I was afraid at the beginning of the session that there could be some bad TRS legislation out there, something along the lines of moving it to more of a privatized version. Mm-hmm. They gave that option to charter school employees, I believe, this session. No, did not pass. So the good news is we don't have any carryover bills from TRS that I'm aware of. We got to deal with 240 again. It's still eligible in a 2-year session. Was there anything that passed that concerned you about TRS this year?
There's nothing that passed. What did concern Buster and I both was the Christmas tree that appeared on the one piecers bill that just kept getting worse and worse and worse in the last 3 days. And the disturbing thing, and I will just share this with you, is we had been told by the governor's office that they had already sent the orders to both the House and the Senate. They just needed to stand down, and they didn't. They didn't. On all of those bills, they kept Christmas treeing on there. They did it anyway. So I don't know what that says for the communication between the governor's staff and the leadership in the House, primarily in the Senate. What was the problem? So, but we got out of it. I mean, I too was on all night with live streaming Sine Die. So was Buster. So were a couple of other people, you know, from the TRS staff. And we were shocked. I will tell you, Buster was shocked at what was being added and what was going on. And a lot of it was Jan Jones. She kept communicating with the governor's office and with both the House and the Senate, saying she really needed those changes in the TRS bill. Now, what we have ever done to tick her off, I'm not sure, unless she's just decided to put it all together and make it an overall attack on public education, teachers, teacher pension funds. But ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, I am very concerned about the Speaker Pro Tem, Jan Jones. And I don't know if she is at all vulnerable in her House seat. She's been there forever. And she's been Pro Tem forever. I mean, back into what, 2005 or something like that. But we need to be very careful with that particular individual. She is very, yeah.
Debbie,
I'm trying to be polite and not really put the labels I'd like to.
Debbie,
She is problem. Yes, ma'am.
let me say what I say. When Jan Jones walks in to a retirement or education committee meeting, it is bad news for public education and educators every single time. And that's just
Well, she actually walked
experience.
into the House Education Subcommittee
Yep.
because they didn't have the vote. They were going to defeat something.
Yes.
She walked in and voted, which she can do. But I don't ever remember seeing that in all the years I've been lobbying. They are pushing the limits on not only propriety, but on the rules, and doing so shamelessly. I was more disappointed in a couple of legislators, and then just as equally proud in those 16 Republicans. And, you know.
Debbie, while you're talking about those 16 Republicans,
Yeah.
put it in earlier, but I want to put it in again with an explanation. If you click on this link, and I really hope you will, this is a way to tell thank you to the 89 members of the House that voted against the bill. You know, we triggered bunches of communications to them. They did what we asked them to do, and we ought to take the time to thank them. So literally, Lisa and I wrote this, and I think it's 2 sentences long. And if it's 20 seconds probably to complete the whole thing. But it's important that we thank those also that did us right this year.
So Joe, that went to all of those 89.
Yes.
Not just to mine, because that was because I did it and I wondered at the time, did that just go to my House rep or whether it went to all 8? And I'm glad to hear that. Can I do it again?
Yeah, give it to your husband.
Debbie, anybody that you know that can send that because we asked everybody to send, asking them to vote no multiple times. And I think our members, Joe, need to understand that those 16 stood up to tremendous pressure. Aforementioned Speaker Pro Tem Jones was putting very heavy pressure on them. We heard, and one of the representatives told me, yes, they were called to the governor's office during the day on Sine Die for some more arm twisting. So we really need to thank them and be prepared to support them, because the DeVos-backed voucher proponents are going to be full steam ahead here in Georgia next year. You know, they are threatening them with primary opponents. And I can say that while these 16 did not vote with us on everything that we would have liked, it is for sure that these primary opponents that they are looking for them will be against us completely and totally when it comes to our priorities for public education.
Let's talk about something else good in the budget. So we talked about the big budget for next year that's got money, more money for ESPs and PSERS. There's also another $2,000 pay raise for teachers, certified teachers. I think that's $7,000 since 2019. There are bonuses for custodians of $1,000. There are pay raises for cafeteria workers, school bus drivers, and school nurses that are about 5%. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, especially since we still have waivers in Georgia, because that could be diverted to, any of this could be diverted to other purposes if you have a waiver.
So Joe, my question is the pay raise for teachers, primarily the 2,000, is that on, I just don't know, salary schedule? Is it one time, and can it be waived?
Yeah, it can be waived. Schools have, some have waivers for, I can't remember what it's called. I'll call it financial flexibility. It is a salary step, permanent increase. But this is where members are also critical, monitoring your school board to make sure these things are adopted as they should be. One of the other big issues at the Capitol this year was on the state health benefit plan. The state is seeing a 67% increase in their costs to ensure educators, not only certified teachers, but ESPs as well. They put about $1 billion into the budget to help school districts cope with that massive employer contribution increase. So some pretty good stuff in the budget. Those will all be implemented after July 1 for the 2023-2024 school year. I'm not going to really get bogged down a whole lot, but literacy was a really big issue this year too.
Before you move on, Linda has her hand up, and Linda, you're on for a question.
I was about to say mine could wait. Joe was on a roll, but I'm wondering for 24, who's up for election?
Every legislator, Senate and House. And
Oh,
also, right?
yeah.
No.
Okay.
Not Ossoff, Joe. All we will have is House, Senate, Georgia House, Georgia Senate, and President.
I haven't been keeping track of federal lately. Yeah,
Okay.
so all legislators are up every 2 years. There have been bills introduced in the past to increase terms for the Senate to 6, the House to 4, but none of them really get very far. But every one of them are up again.
Okay, gotta find some PAC money.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Let me call out one other legislator that we need to be recruiting against, and that's the only Democrat who voted against excuse me, the only Democrat that voted for the voucher bill, Nisha Maynor. She is getting loved on by one party and hated by the other. She might even get kicked out of the Democrat caucus. I'm not sure, but she runs in a district that runs from, oh, can't remember how I described it. It's basically south and southwest Atlanta. Almost, if you know where Cascade Elementary School, she's that far south. If you know somebody in that area that's
I
interested
do.
in running, have them call me, have them call Lisa. We want to be involved in that. She is not a friend of education. It's a very Democratic district. I don't know how she keeps getting elected, but she is not only, she not only voted for vouchers, she's an evangelist for vouchers. I mean, it's just amazing. And there's been some harsh words on Twitter from some of her Democrat colleagues, and would love to find a replacement for her. I was going to talk briefly, a couple of literacy bills moving through, both passed. The first one by Billy Hickman of Statesboro creates the Georgia Council on Literacy, which does have teachers as a part of the composition of it, of this council, to basically kind of do a look-see and an overview of literacy laws and education programs in Georgia and make recommendations. There's another bill, HB 538 from Bethany Ballard down in Houston County. I'm not really appreciative of the way she describes her bill. She describes it as what, Lisa?
It's going to teach teachers how to teach reading.
Yeah.
Because we don't know how to teach reading, and our colleges and universities aren't teaching us how to appropriately teach reading.
That's correct. It does require 3 universal screeners, K through 3. And it got something else tacked on to the end of it, which has to do with school board conversations, if I recall correctly. So those are a couple of the literacy bills that passed. I want to go over just a few bills that, and I know my time's kind of running short, but some bills that did not pass that are priorities for us going into next year. Again, if a bill was introduced this year, the first year of a 2-year session, it's eligible to be considered next year. Our good friend Doreen Carter has a bill to expand the retired teachers returning to work legislation from last year. She wanted to go much further, literally only about 200, at the last count I heard, 211 teachers have taken advantage of this relatively new law where a retired educator can return to the classroom in a subject area of high need while drawing their salary and retirement benefits. This is designed to address the teacher shortage, especially in critical areas like special education, math, and the like. Doreen Carter's bill would increase the number of high need areas, subject areas, to 6, up from 3. Our waiver bill was introduced this year, and that's SB 268. Nabila Islam introduced it in the Senate. We'll be gearing up for that and looking for a House companion next year. That dialogue must continue. It's really remarkable, Lisa, in the last 3 years, how much progress we've made in just creating awareness of vouchers. 3 years ago, we talked to somebody about vouchers, even some on the education committee had no idea what we were talking. We talked to our own members, they still didn't know what we were talking about. But people were beginning to understand that, and Matt Brass brought it up in a committee as well, is, well, if this bill can be waived, why don't we just do an urging resolution instead? I mean, really, the local school district has a veto power, Lisa's term, over this General Assembly, and it's not right. And it's not serving our kids well. And the classic example that always comes to my mind is class size. We have standards and laws on the books to regulate the number of students who can be in a classroom, but almost every school in the state, but 2 have waivers to exempt them for that. And COVID, and even after COVID, we still have reports of that educators with classes larger than the state requires. They can waive, we just talked about it with salary money. They could have waived any of the past teacher salaries, I believe, or any other funding that comes to school. They could divert it to landscaping at the central offices if they wanted to. None of this is serving our children well. So I'll mention that one. You know, one I just skipped, Lisa, was the planning time bill. That also.
Yeah, that's the good stuff.
Yeah, why don't you share that good stuff?
Yeah, so, and this was another one, Debbie talked earlier about a Christmas tree. And for those of you who haven't been, when we talk about a Christmas tree, that means a bill that typically the last couple of days, they start adding other stuff to it. So even our plan, I described our planning time bill as a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. It didn't have a lot on it, but it did have a few ornaments. And but it's Joe was getting mixed up with the 10 somethings. I kept getting mixed up with the 40s because we had Senate Bill 240. Our planning bill was House Bill 340. And this will provide in state law that every classroom teacher gets a planning period equal to one segment of instruction each day. It does say in extreme circumstances, you can be asked to cover a class one time a week during that planning period. And it's kindergarten through 12th grade. So there was one vote against it in the Senate. And I talked to that senator, and the senator point blank said it was because of one of the amendments. And the discussion about waivers happened with this bill. The sponsor refused an amendment, refused to even consider an amendment to say it could not be waived. So here's how I think we have to approach this. Assuming the governor signs the bill, then no school system, a charter school system has blanket waivers. So a charter system, you're going to have to get it put in local policy. But a strategic waiver school system does not have a waiver for this new law because it's new. And in order to waive it, they will have to amend their waivers. And amending their waivers requires that the local Board of Education pass a resolution to amend the waivers and then take it to their amended contract has to be approved by the State Board of Education. If our locals cannot stand up and say, do not waive this, do not amend this to waive this, then that's what we've got to do. Margaret, the professional learning, professional development, as it's written now, they would be able to require you to attend that during your planning period because it specifically talks about supervising students. We weren't able to get the word unencumbered into it. That would be the next step. But what we're seeing, I know we've got some districts where you've got 3 or 4 days taken up with meetings, but we're also seeing districts where people are covering classes in their planning time every single day.
So that becomes effective, I think, July 1. Of course, the governor does have to sign it. He has 40 days from the period that legislation is officially transmitted to him to sign or veto laws. If he does not sign or veto a law, it automatically becomes law. That's right. You mentioned one thing I totally forgot, Lisa, and that is another victory. We kind of had it earlier in the session, but it was in play on the last day. People hearing rumors that this HB 101 that Lisa described might get tacked onto. So this is another voucher legislation. So there's a tax credit in Georgia law that is designed to reward and entice parents to give money to private schools through what's called the School Scholarship Organization. Last year they tried to double it from 100 million to 200 million a year. That didn't fly. Went to conference committee. They did increase it by, I think, $10 million last year. And they were back again this year trying to increase another $10 million. But that bill, it did pass the House, but it ran into a buzzsaw in the Senate committee, where like Tillery had amendments. Blake is a very well-respected appropriations chairman, Republican from Vidalia. Jason Estevez, a freshman member, Democrat from Atlanta, had amendments to it. So, you know, if you're a voucher lobbyist right now, you're going to be in a corner crying. I mean, everything that you wanted this session vanished. You know, they see what they consider their peer states passing voucher bills overwhelmingly, and they can't get it done here. It must drive them insane. A couple of things I just want to mention that are definitely on the agenda. As I mentioned, we got the waiver bill introduced. We have the TEACS bill from last year that would have done away with the negative consequences to the needs development rating. I understand twice in 5 years you can lose your certification. The bill last year would have made that constructive, not punitive. That building was introduced a little bit late, didn't really get a hearing, but we'll be back next year pushing that. We have some great members. We got two bills, one in the Senate and the House, that would have raised starting teacher salaries to $50,000. They're both by Democrats. Didn't look like they attracted a whole lot of Republican support at this time, but we'll continue to plug on that. Our starting salaries are still below even Mississippi. So while I think we've gained some ground on the average salary, there's plenty of work to be done on the starting salary as well. You know, a couple of other things you can look forward to next year. We've got two different superintendent bills. One that would make the election of the state school board, would do away with the election of the state school superintendent and make it appointed. Then we have another one by Matt Dubnik, the former chairman of the House Education Committee, that would make local superintendents elected and school boards appointed. So both those require constitutional change. I don't think there's an appetite for that right now, but we'll see. But you got some big names behind those buildings. Another bill early on that died was SB 88, which was kind of like Georgia's version of Don't Say Gay in Florida, if you followed that at all. This would have prohibited conversations between a student and a guidance counselor or a social worker or a teacher that would have interfered, in our opinion, with the mandated reporting requirements that educators do have. So you could not have a conversation of a sensitive issue without parental consent. So the first thing I imagined was maybe that child himself or herself is a victim of sexual abuse or abuse in the home, and wants and needs to talk to somebody about it. But can you imagine, to do so, they have to get the permission of the abusing parent? Pretty incredible bill. One of the worst drafted pieces of legislation, died in committee when Elena Parent tabled it. So that's kind of a summary. I think it was a good session for us. Not the doom and gloom I expected. Not everything went our way. We didn't get everything passed we wanted to, but it was, in my book, a success. And thank you guys for doing all you do to make that possible.
Well, Joe, I know you're respected on both sides of the aisle there, and I know that you probably need a vacation at some sort of desert island with fruity adult beverages in the background, but that you'll have to figure out on your own. And we'll take a minute here for some questions. Patrick, hand is up.
Thank you, Joe, for everything you do. Who was that legislator from the Cascade area? Because that's where I used to live. I know lots of people.
It's Misha Maynor, M-E-S-H-A, Mainor.
Mission Minor, Minor.
Maynor, yeah.
Okay, I will do my part on that. I don't know if she's part of TFA, but I know that Jason Estevez, Ishay Collins, who's chair of the Atlanta Public School Board, they're all TFAs. In fact, Ishay used to be a GAE member, but she turned evil. She turned to the dark side. And I'm just saying that those, and she lives in that area, so it wouldn't surprise me if we ousted her that Ishay would run, and that would be just as bad. But I see a lot of the voucher money coming in that area. We kept out NPUS, which is just to the east of that area. So I know that there's some work to be done, but I'll use my influence in that area.
Yeah.
Thank you.
House District 56, I'm sorry. And it runs from about, oh my, I can't. Sure where that is. Oh, we're 75 and 85 connect at south of Atlanta. She's got that part all the way south to near Booker T. Washington High School, and then over to Cascade Elementary.
Okay, that sounds like just north of the airport, all the way to the stadium. If you say in Booker, Washington, that's more Morris Brown and the rest of them. So that's a large area.
So hopefully we'll find somebody good there. Because she's a problem. We did have one Democrat that didn't vote. And when you don't vote, it actually, it's, you got to get a majority of the chamber. So don't vote kind of counts as a no vote. But other than those two, I think that's the only Democrats that didn't actually cast a no vote.
Any other pressing questions about General Assembly 2023?
I'm gonna go get a fruity drink.
I'm going to just share some general information. First off, if you are thinking about running for public office, NEA has a program called See Educators Run. And so they will give you training to be able to run, hopefully, a successful campaign. So you don't have to go this on your own. And I will make a plea, if you are a retired educator, of course, in your spare time, you could go through and consider running. And I'll say even for, but especially for a local school board election or a local commission, a city council, just planning a seat. I do want to share some information that was put out yesterday to GAE-Retired members in the loop. And if you're not getting that, I'll put my information in the chat, send me an email. A week from Friday, we have our all-member conference. You don't have to be a delegate, just a retired member, and in order to vote, and it's via a Zoom. It'll be on the information will be on our Facebook page. So please join us for that. We'll be passing some amendments to our GAE-Retired Constitution and bylaws. Also, if you can see, I hope from the GAE communications that we are growing by leaps and bounds within all membership categories within GAE. And part of that growth, our executive director, Craig Carter, is committed to being out in the field and having membership blitzes. So you can see there is one listed here for Lawrence County, but reach out to your UNISERV director, or you can reach out to me if you're interested in helping go into the schools and recruit members. It's a nice way to go through and help do some work within the association. I'm skipping some of these. We do have our board of directors meeting next on April 21st. So myself, Tony Smith, who was on this call, and Brenda Montgomery, who's on this call, reach out to us if you have anything you'd like to come before the GAE board. Some of us will be delegates at the Spring RA in Columbus. And if you are going, bring your book and bear. We do this initiative for the county in which we hold the RA. So because we're in Columbus, Muskogee County, all the books and bearers will be donated to the Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School. TRS board meeting. Lisa Underwood, retired member, is attending via Zoom, as are some of the rest of us. She does an excellent report. And if you haven't read, take a look, please, and read the report. TRS, and I know Debbie will echo this, is in fine shape. It is not doom and gloom, as people want to often portray who are our naysayers. So please be cognizant of what does transpire at TRS meetings. We are having our Leadership Development Academy in Augusta, Georgia at the beginning of June. So it's open to all GAE members. Registration now through May 14th. So please, if you're thinking about joining us, please do. And Tiffany, and answer your question, this communication that I'm going through went into the GAE-Retired newsletter in the loop, but also there's the GAE news that hopefully I'll share in just a minute. And Retired has a section in that has all this information too. Couple of last things. We do the free pre-retirement seminars on a Saturday. So hopefully both members and non-members who are within 5 years of retirement can join us virtually. We really do meet for about 4 hours from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. We cover all of these topics. Again, this is free. Send this out to your friends and relatives. I still hear things, and I've been retired for over a decade, that I wish I had known prior to my retirement. I just didn't hear it. I wasn't ready to hear it. And the very last thing I leave you with is our GAE-Retired lunch bunch next month. We always have these, as I mentioned, on the first Monday with a hard start and a hard stop. And Tony Smith, who's our GAE-Retired president, will be going through and doing she works with the Welcoming School cadre. And so she will be doing some thought-raising activities with us in terms of going through and talking about pronoun usage, how to be respectful in the 21st century. Things are not what they were 50 years ago, and I still have difficulty when I'm talking with a group. I go through and say, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and I just make some assumptions that I shouldn't go through and make. I'm going to share one more time, and this is just an FYI so that you go, oh, okay. If you didn't get your GAE Voices newsletter, it may be because your email information isn't correct. So I'll again put my name and number in the chat, and you can go through and contact me about this. And I'm going to scroll through this. This is for active members, but some of the retired information does get in the GAE news, including the LDA. But as you go down, there's this graphic, news from GAE-Retired. Click on this graphic to read more. And when you do that, each of the items that are there, and slowly loading on my computer. Technology has been very interesting to all the people with whom I've interacted today. But each of these items that is there when you click on the bulletin board is hot linked. So you can read all the GAE information also, sorry, all the GAE retired information also in the GAE monthly voices. So take a look and be in the know about all that information. And Linda, did you want to share about Wind Beneath Our Wings?
Yes, I'm coming. Thank you so much. The GAE-Retired received a grant from NEA, and the purpose of the grant is to develop, I would say, a roadmap for the categories of aspiring teachers, pre-retired and retired, will come together in manners that will be decided by them to look at how to enhance teaching and learning and service to public education. And I'm going to put my phone number in the chat. And if you want to participate, I know I may have some pre-retired members here. I don't have the list, but if you are 25 years and out is what I usually call it, especially we need you. But it's been a pleasure, and good afternoon. I didn't say hello, but thanks a bunch. But I'm going to put my number in, and hopefully you can come on and give us some of that brain power. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Linda. And the last thing I
Mhm.
will say, if you're not a GAE retired member and you're still working or on spring break this week, and you haven't become a pre-retired member, this is your opportunity now to go ahead and join the retired organization as a pre-retired subscriber by locking in your dues dollars at today's rate. And what that means is our lifetime dues, you pay the fee one time is $450. And once you pay that, you never have to pay that again. And you can pay it in installments between now and the end of this membership year on August 31st. So if I count on my fingers for April, May, June, July, August, that's 450 divided by 5, $90 for 5 months on your credit card or via your checking account. And you too are a pre-retired member. So consider doing that. Deborah Jones, I see your hand.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody.
Hey.
I am Deborah Jones, the president of the Organization of DeKalb Educators. And I am sure that you've heard that our board has decided that they want to get a new superintendent. And I'm asking you, if you live in DeKalb County, to give those board members a call. Dr. Tinsley, who has been working hard, feverishly, to steady our ship. She has done a great job. And for them to throw her out after doing all this hard work, getting Druid Hills taken care of and some of the other schools that needed repair, she's done this work. And so when you do the work, you shouldn't be thrown out like you have not done anything. The person that they're deciding to bring in is not what DeKalb needs. If you know anything about DeKalb County, you know DeKalb is a beast. You have to know the district. You have to know the children, the parents, and the community. For them to bring somebody in who knows nothing about DeKalb, we will only be spending more taxpayer dollars. So I implore you, if you live in DeKalb County, call your school board members and say to them, Dr. Tinsley is the best that we have, and she should have that job. Thank you.
Deborah, thank you so much for your leadership of the organization of DeKalb Educators and for that information. It is 12:30. We have a hard stop. I hope you have a wonderful sunny spring day. Minimize the pollen out there. Joe Fleming.
Deborah Jones.
Thank you so much for your time and talent today and every day on behalf of GAE. You all have a lovely day and join us next month, first Wednesday. Bye, y'all.